It's absolutely amazing. I'm just tongue-tied just talking about it, thinking about it.
Yes, I'm a favorite now.
We're almost there. You can say it. You can say it. Welcome to the Extraordinary Being Movement, where we inspire you to take action, influence you for change, and motivate you for success. Hi, I'm your host and coach, Len DeCarmine, tonight, and we have an explosive show this evening, which I'm so excited about. It's about how you can have it all. A strong marriage, a supportive family, and a super successful business. But before we get into that, let me introduce to you my two favorite co-hosts, the one and only Fred Martinez. Fred, how are you this evening?
Doing fabulous. It's going to be great. It's going to be a great show tonight because these are the things that I failed at. So thank you.
I told you earlier, this show is pretty much for you. Actually, it's all for us. We've been through different things in our lives that have affected our businesses and our relationships. So this is going to be an awesome discussion this evening that's going to shed a lot of light on things that we've done in the past and things we need to do for the future. But before we get into our special guest, let's just say hi to Christopher Shiver. Chris, what's going on?
Hey, Len. Fred, you may have made those mistakes, but I feel like I'm making those mistakes right now because I'm in entrepreneurship and with Corona happening as well on top of it, there's tension in the relationship and there's communication that has definitely shifted and changed because we've been so close to each other. So right now I need some guidance. I need some clarity. Please tell me where to go.
Well, Chris, we're going to get that tonight plus more. So let's not waste any more time. Let me introduce our guest for this evening, and that's Monica Tanner, who is married to her best friend, boss mom to 4 small human beings, a weekly podcaster herself. The podcast is called On the Brighter Side, Marriage for Entrepreneurs, and the Relationship and Intimacy Sexpert. She understands entrepreneurship and marriage are hard, but they both take work, and she knows that you can do it. There are a lot of ups and downs, and sometimes it feels like it's just too much, but tonight she will let us in on a little secret. Monica Tanner, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here with you guys.
Well, we greatly appreciate it. We've been looking forward to having you because I think this is a topic that true and dear to a lot of entrepreneurs where, we kind of get in that struggle. We want to build these businesses, but our spouse or our partner wants us to have that stability of that 9-to-5 job so that they know that, that money is coming in to pay the bills and support our families and so forth. And I know I've dealt with that a lot throughout my life. Going from job to job, but yet still having that entrepreneur spirit inside of me that I want this more than anything. But I'm always, back and forth trying to balance everything. So we want to definitely talk to you tonight about how to do that balance and so much more. But before we get going, we want to hear a little bit about your journey. How did you get started in this? What brought you to becoming this type of expert?
Yeah, so I think that I've always been very, for lack of a better word, I'm just going to say obsessed with marriage. My parents divorced when I was 12 years old. And I feel like ever since that moment, I've kind of been a student of what makes a marriage strong and lasting. But also the coping mechanism I kind of developed at that young age was that I wanted to always be really good at things. Like I felt like I had to be the best at everything I did in order to kind of earn love, right? And so I also developed a big curiosity about this question: what makes somebody successful? Like the definition of success, what is it, right? And so I feel like those two questions have always been kind of omnipresent in everything that I've done. But so I went to college. I studied sociology and child development with the intention of getting my master's in social work. But before I could start that graduate program, my Prince Charming came in, swept me off my feet. We rode off into the sunset, got married, started our family. And so I kind of shelved that for a while, started raising my kids. We started a business together. So I totally understand being in business with your spouse. After I had my third child, I kind of hit rock bottom where I was like, so overwhelmed by, my responsibilities in the business, having two crazy toddlers running around the house, trying to nurse a newborn baby, keep the house clean, have dinner ready. Like I just was like that coping mechanism I told you about, being good at everything and handling it all. I couldn't do it. And so I kind of, hit this point where I was like, you either have to get me some help with some of this, or you've got to check me into a funny farm, because I can't do it. I can't do all of it. Right. And so at that moment, we pulled me out of our business, and I did the stay-at-home mom thing for a little bit. And after just a little while, I kind of developed this kind of restlessness, this kind of desire to do something for myself. And so I started my own business, and continued to raise our children. Sure. After our fourth child went to school full time, I decided it was time for me to grow up and like really do what I was passionate about. So I sold my business and went back to school to become a marriage and family counselor.
Wow.
Yeah. So a year into that program, I decided I absolutely, positively did not want to be a therapist. And it was a difficult and expensive realization, because that program was a lot of money. So we chalked that up to a nice little donation. And I dropped out of school, and I got really depressed, because I was like, dang it. I want to help people, but I don't want to help them when they're at their end of their rope. I want to help them to prevent them from getting there, right? Mm-hmm. Like I want to help them so they don't end up in a counselor's office.
Sure.
But I was like, who's going to listen to me? I don't have any credentials. I have years of experience, but I don't know how to get my message out there into the world. And luckily, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Russell Brunson and ClickFunnels, but he happens to be my neighbor.
Oh, wow.
I had no idea who he was at the time. Honestly, he was just a nice guy who lived around the corner, who was checking on us. And I remember he was sitting on my couch, and I was telling him this sob story about how I just had this message inside of me. I wanted to get out to the world. And he sat there on my couch, and he was like, you need to start a podcast. And I have no idea why I listened to him at the time, but I did. I did exactly what he told me to do. He sent me an email with like explicit instructions of what I needed to do to start a podcast. And I did. I followed him to a T. A month later, started my podcast, and I started to explore with all of these guests that would come on my show, what makes a marriage strong and lasting, and what is the definition of success. And it took me several years, but I finally found my voice and zeroed in on my niche, and really figured out that I had this unique experience, this unique insight, and now all of these incredible gems of wisdom that I had collected over the years, that I could really help at this intersection between entrepreneurship and marriage. Sure. So that's what I do, and I love it so much.
No, I could definitely hear the passion in your voice about this, that, after all those years of training, the schooling, and, family life, you took all that experience and made it into something that can really help and benefit people. And that's absolutely amazing. So, I wish you the best in this continuous endeavor and keep changing lives, because that's what you're great at, and that's what your gifts are for people. So that's awesome. So awesome that you're doing all this. Chris, you have a question?
Actually, I just want to say, because you mentioned something I find really interesting. Because when I was in coaching, I kind of had it from the second direction. Because I was doing a lot of coaching, but what I found was that usually when people decide to do that work, do that grit, it's usually it's kind of already happened. Like the bad thing has already kind of happened, and that's why they're there. But what you said, I find very interesting, is that you want to get ahead of it. You want to teach people what they need to learn now, so that 20 years in the future, I'm not trying to figure it out then. I already have it figured out. I don't have to run into these problems. I'd love for you to tell us more about that. How do you get ahead of this?
Yeah, well, so I find that in my own experience, and then working with so many others, that what happens is entrepreneurship, like you said in the opening, it's a lot more risky than like a 9-to-5 job. There's a lot more ups and downs. There's a lot more opportunities for failure, but there's a lot more opportunities for just extreme growth as well. But a lot of people don't take into account the strain that puts on a relationship when somebody's like, head down focused on on something entrepreneurial. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of energy, a lot of financial resources, and a lot of, frankly, just experimentation. Like, you're going to fail more times than you were expecting, but hopefully, you keep getting up and trying again. But that support system from home, that supportive spouse, a supportive family, that's so important. And so that's where I come in, and I've developed a series of strategies and skill sets and frameworks that I call Sexpionage. So that's how I help people. I teach people how to navigate all of the challenges that arise when you're really working hard to build something, both at home and in your business. So that's what it is. It's called Sexpionage, and it's basically learning all the different levels of intimacy that are involved when you're trying to work together with another human being who sometimes is in the business, but not necessarily. So they don't, a lot of times the spouse isn't entrepreneurial, and so isn't as big of a risk taker, and, doesn't understand these huge kind of leaps of faith that the entrepreneur needs to make in order to be successful. So there's a lot of tug and pull. There's a lot of give and take. There's a lot of navigating these waters. So.
Yeah, how do you make a compass? Like, how do you make one? Because, like, you just kind of hit what I'm currently dealing with, which is my partner, she doesn't quite understand the entrepreneurship lifestyle. Actually, I don't think she completely understands it. I think she conceptualizes it, but emotionally, I don't think she quite understands it. How do I gain a compass through that to the point where I can be fully supportive for her and understand, like, she knows what she knows, and that's the best I can do.
Yeah. Well, I love that. So you're calling it a compass. I like to call it a blueprint. So the way I kind of look at it, the way I kind of maybe learned it and solidified it for myself is you, like, if you see a house that you really love, right? You're driving through a neighborhood and you're like, I love that house. I would love to live in that house, right? All you really need to be able to build that house is the plans, the blueprint to build that house, right? So you go and you find who has the blueprint for that house, and then you start to build it using the materials for that house. And so that's what I hopefully am offering to, these entrepreneurs is somewhat of a blueprint. It's like, the lumber, the electrical, the just the guts that make up the house that you want to live in. But that's up to you. Like, you've got to pick up the house, but the lumber and the electrical, they might look differently for you, but foundationally they are the same. You have to have electricity, you have to have plumbing, you have to have framing. Those types of things are what I can teach you, but you have to put it and build it into the house that you want, right? So
one thing that when we were talking about it, you're talking about the blueprint, you're talking about the formula. The one thing I kind of could say from an individual for myself is gone through the aspects of having a business, and then when money wasn't coming in because the contracts weren't coming in, that the stress and strain on the marriage, also where I'm on the other aspects of it because I'm divorced now, and the time I was married had a business and contracts weren't coming in. So things kind of like unraveled. And so an individual like you coming in to prevent that type of situation where both couples can get on the same page would definitely be, when you kind of look at it, as you're providing the guidance on, hey, if you follow these steps, because husbands and wives don't really communicate. If they work on that communication, they're going to realize that you're going to have the pitfalls of the business going up and going down. You're celebrating your successes. And even when you have your losses, you should be celebrating, because that's an opportunity for other people saying, hey, this isn't going to work out, but you're opening up the door for somebody else to come in. So I love it. And I love how you have the growth mindset, because the one thing that I loved how you said it was the expense You said that was a donation. I love that.
That's, I feel like everything we do in life, like I've lost a lot of money in different, like, entrepreneurial things that I've tried, and I call it a donation. I call it schooling. You pay for a college education. Sometimes you learn these tough lessons, but the important thing is that you learn something from them. So you can say, that money paid for, me learning this, right? And so I feel like with your question, Chris, I gave you such a big bird's eye view of it. But for you, what you were asking, my answer to you, like, how do you bring your spouse along with you when they're not necessarily entrepreneurial? My biggest answer to you would be vulnerability, would be for you to be able to open up and share with her your dreams, your vision for what you're building, for you to be able to share your insecurities, the challenges you're facing, your wins, and the things that you're excited about, right? So she doesn't necessarily need to be passionate about what you're passionate about or geek out on what you're geeking out on, right? Because people who expect their spouses to get really geeked out on what they're geeking out on, they're going to be very disappointed, right? But you can share that emotional journey with her, so she's there along the ride, so she can love you in the hard times and love you in the amazing times, because you're opening up to her. And I think that's the biggest mistake that entrepreneurs make, because I know what my big dreams are, like I know what this final destination looks like, but if I don't bring my family into it, I can't be upset if they're not like supporting and like getting excited for me, because I haven't shared that with them. So I think that's one of the most important things and places to start, is just with this kind of raw vulnerability of, hey, like, I don't always have all the answers. Like, I have no idea how we're going to do this most of the time, but here's what I ultimately want to build. And when I'm standing on the top of this mountain, when I achieve all of these things, I want to be standing up there with you, right? But it's not a straight shot to the top. Like, there's going to be landslides. There's going to be, it's going to snow and we're not going to have our coats. There's going to be, a lack of oxygen once we get to a certain level. But at the same time, there's also going to be these incredible views, and there's going to be these amazing vistas and beautiful weather at times, right? And we get to experience all of it together. So when we're standing at the top, hand in hand, we can look over all that we've accomplished and all that we've overcome and know that we did it together, right? So it's being able to have that vulnerability and share all of those emotions along the way, and ask for the support that you need, because a lot of people just don't do that, right? Just like, hey, you just expect it. So being able to open up and be really vulnerable and share all of it with your spouse is going to be probably the most important thing that you can do.
When you said that, sorry, Chris, go ahead.
No, please go for it.
I was gonna say, when you said that, what popped in my mind was Rocky and one of the movies, and where he ends up winning the championship. He wins the belt, and he says, "Adrian, we did it!" So that popped in my mind, because what he was looking at is he wanted to celebrate that with his wife, and it's just everything that you do, you're wanting to celebrate it with your best friend, your spouse. And so that is really good advice to tell people.
Yeah, and funny enough, like you're telling me this, I'm seeing my own family dynamic, because I'm coming from a family of entrepreneurs, and so I've learned that a lot of the things I've learned how to deal with my relationships now, I've learned from them, and unfortunately, we do not practice that sort of vulnerability about our businesses with each other. We just don't. And so, unfortunately, though, like now that you talk about that, I kind of put it all into perspective for myself. And I was like, oh well, that would cause some tension in the family right there. Because not only that, I mean, because as a children, you have absolutely no idea what's going on, nor do you have any understanding what's going on, and you're kind of just dragged along for it, and it's confusing, it's frustrating. And I really wish there was some vulnerability there as a kid. I've been really like, hey, we're doing this because, the family is awesome and that's what we do. Like that would have been enough.
What's really interesting too is, because more than the financial benefit that eventually my business will provide for my family, they get to learn a lot of different things just about life, like life lessons when we can open up to them, right? So like if I have this big launch coming up and I set all these goals for myself and I tell my kids, depending on their ages, you can share different things with them, right? And what if I don't hit those goals, right? How do I respond then? Do I climb into bed and be depressed for the next year of my life? Or do I look at the numbers and I'm like, hey, this didn't pan out the way mom was expecting, mom was hoping, but we're gonna look through this. We're gonna figure out how we can readjust and do it again better the next time, right? And so they get to learn how do we respond when things don't go our way, right? That's a big life lesson that these kids need to know. Like if we were planning a massive trip to Disneyland, but we didn't come up with the funds for that, and we have to change our trip to maybe a weekend getaway to a cabin somewhere, that's a great lesson for them to learn. Look, our priority is to be together as a family. So whether it's a big, huge vacation to Disneyland or a little vacation, an hour drive away, we value family time. And so we're going to find a way to do it, maybe not so elaborately. So all of those things are the resiliency and all of those lessons. That's the gift of entrepreneurship that you're giving your family and your kids, right? So I do think that vulnerability is so important.
Definitely where the value is, for sure. And another thing I'm kind of curious about. So, because there's a huge difference between the entrepreneur, mindset and of course the employee, and
Very.
yeah, and so I'm gonna let you in something a little personal with me right now. I'm having a bit of a conflict with my partner over which one's better, and she thinks that being an employee is better, and I'm like, okay, that's what you think for yourself. I don't think that for myself. I don't think I'm good with employee and all that stuff. I guess I know for myself, from being where I was raised, if you want to be a millionaire, which I do, right? I'm sorry, but going the employee route is not the way you're going to do it. I mean, maybe in a few particular cases it will happen, but it's just so rare and few in between. So how do you go about belief systems? We run into belief systems. How do you go about teaching vulnerability in those cases, especially if the spouse doesn't want to get vulnerable about it? How do you help your clients?
Well, I teach them about curiosity. So actually, you just asked me, and I just unveiled my favorite equation in this whole thing, which is curiosity plus vulnerability equals creativity. So when you have different ideas about things, that's not a bad thing. Conflict is a good thing. In fact, it's what brings passion to a relationship, right? You wouldn't want to be married to your clone and agree on everything, right? So when you apply this equation to any type of conflict, curiosity plus vulnerability, you end up with creativity. You end up turning the conflict into not compromise. I hate the word compromise because that just it's a semantics thing, I know, but when I think of the word compromise, I mean, everybody's giving something up until you get something that nobody's really happy with. But if you apply curiosity in that case, why do you think that? What has molded your thoughts or your experiences into this, right? And you figure out where they're coming from and what's at the deepest, rootest part of that, right? And then you can crack open and get vulnerable. What's at the deepest, rootest part of your beliefs, right? Invariably, you'll come up with something really creative where neither of you has to give up anything, but you can create something even more expansive and exciting than what was there before. So if you'll apply that equation to any type of conflict, wherever you are, whether it's feeling a lack of support or not being understood or whatever it is, if you will get really curious and then allow yourself to get vulnerable, typically you'll end up with something really creative and really amazing.
Is that resonating with you, Chris?
Oh, that's all 100%. I just love it. Love the energy. I love the commitment to this common ground. I love the combination of vulnerability plus curiosity equals creativity. Oh God.
And it might take more than one conversation.
Of course.
Overnight, right?
I want it now.
Yeah. But like entrepreneurship, it's not immediate. It's like a road where you have highs and you have lows, but eventually, if you stick it out, you'll get there.
Monica, I have a question for you. In terms of the wisdom and knowledge, you have this life lessons that you've learned. So what life lesson have you learned that you can share with our audience?
About what?
just your life lesson of how you came up with this, your the mindset, because you had this journey. Mm-hmm. And so because of this journey, you had pitfalls, you had and then as well as you had successes. So you have some knowledge that you can pass on to maybe that you're like the 20-year-old version of yourself.
Mm-hmm. So I think that my biggest lesson that I've learned in life is that, well, let me go back. So I was explaining to you, my parents got a divorce when I was like 12, right? And so all of a sudden my life dramatically changed. And it was kind of like, my parents were kind of off doing their own things. And I created this kind of persona where I had to get really, really strong and really independent. Like nobody was in my corner anymore. Like it was just me against the world kind of thing, right? And so I took that into my marriage. And it took until I had 3 kids. And I was also certain that I was never getting a divorce. Like I was like, this will never happen. I will learn enough about marriage to just never allow this to happen to me. And so it became my biggest fear. My biggest fear, my whole life would be wrecked if I ever allowed myself to get a divorce, right? And so, but I was strong and independent and I knew I could do it no matter what it was. And I didn't ever ask for help. And so what happened was after I had this 3rd baby and I was up against like incredible odds and all of my coping mechanisms no longer worked, I was at the lowest of the low and I had to completely recreate how I was going to get through the challenges I was facing. And what I learned was to ask for help. I couldn't do it by myself. I wasn't going to be able to just strong man my way out of it. I couldn't do it. And so I had to ask for help. So how have I learned, like what I've learned on this journey all the way is that if ever I get to a point where I don't know the answers or I can't do it myself, I ask for help. And a lot of these things that we've been discussing this whole time are things that I have learned from people who have gone before me, people way wiser than me, way more experienced, right? So that's my podcast, On the Brighter Side of Marriage for Entrepreneurs, right? I interview successful entrepreneurs who have like gone through all of this, right? And I take copious notes and I listen to them. What have they learned that have helped them on their journey? And if ever I get to a point where I'm like, I don't know what the next step is, I don't know how this goes, I don't think I can do this by myself, instead of seeing it as a sign of weakness, I see it as my greatest strength now, as I'm like, I have so many people now that I can go to and just ask for help. And so I think that seeing, vulnerability and the ability to ask for help as a strength is one of the greatest assets that you can develop. And then recognizing that it's okay to allow people to help you, because when you get through to the other side, you can turn around and help somebody else. Like that is like the whole circle of life.
Love it. Love it.
No, I absolutely love that. Monica, I know you interview a lot of people, a lot of successful people who are, their marriage is going well, they're being entrepreneurs. Is there a commonality between them that you've noticed that comes up a lot in these conversations you have with them, that like the secret that each of them are still, that's working for them?
Yeah, I think the secret is just deciding, right? It's just making a choice. Like I'm going to make the choice to prioritize my marriage. I'm going to make the choice to be successful no matter what, challenges I face. I'm just going to choose to keep climbing up that mountain. Even if I get knocked down, I'm going to get up and I'm going to keep climbing up, and I'm going to hold my partner's hand and we're going to get up to the top together. And so the most successful entrepreneurs that I have interviewed have simply made the choice. Like, I don't care how I get there or what it takes, but I'm hand in hand with my partner. We are going to get up to the top of that mountain, and then just doing it.
No, that's great. And that's something that we talk a lot about in all of our shows, is that everybody has a choice in life. Mm-hmm. So you have a choice to either, focus on having a bad marriage. You can focus on having a successful marriage, but the choice is yours. And it's how you go about, supporting your partner, being resourceful and working together, and also communicating. That's a choice both of you need to make and work together on doing that, which is great. I mentioned the word communication. How do you work with partners in communicating more effectively with each other? Because I think that's a big thing that a lot of people have a hard time dealing with.
Yeah, there's thousands and thousands of theories and communication techniques and all of that. I really go back to that equation that we initially talked about, is just being curious, assuming the best of your partner, right? So if your partner's being unsupportive for some reason, or you feel as though your partner is being unsupportive for some reason, right? Instead of assuming the worst, assume the best. Like, there must be some reason that this is causing fear or anxiety or trouble somehow for them. And how can I get to the root of what that is? So just really embracing that curiosity, and then being willing to be vulnerable. Like, hey, when you come in the office and get so upset with me after I'm working so hard to make this thing work, it hurts me. Like, it's hard for me. I'm trying to do this for my family. Like, talk to me about why, this is so, what is this resistance coming from, right? So curiosity, vulnerability, and then come up with a creative solution that both people can live with. And so a lot of times when you start off on this, or you decide to do this journey of entrepreneurship, people get kind of blindsided by the struggles that they're going to face in entrepreneurship. Like, there's a lot of things that just come out of nowhere, and you're like, whoa, that was unexpected, right? And so you just, like, at each of those points, that you might need to renegotiate, like, hey, this is requiring a lot more of me than I agreed to, or this is, a lot harder than I initially thought it would. And so sometimes, like, kind of that contract of I'll keep the kids out of the office for this amount of time, or, whatever, it needs to be renegotiated, right? And so that can show up in a lot of different ways. It can show up in anger, it can show up in resentment, it can show up in whatever, however it is. But if you're, in tune with your partner and they are a priority to you, if you're doing the things that I teach you to do, like daily connect, we haven't even talked about these things, but daily connections and date nights and daily fives and things like that are really important to the relationship, you're going to know if your spouse is struggling with something. And at that point, you can go to them and say, maybe we need to renegotiate this and find a different arrangement that works better for both of us, so that I can do what I need to do, and you can get what you need to get, and do what you need to do, and we both feel better about it, right? So as far as communication, there's techniques galore.
Of course.
The root of it is curiosity and vulnerability.
No, I love it. And let's talk about what you just brought up about date nights and intimacy. I know you mentioned earlier about the various levels of intimacy. Can you shed some more light and about that as well?
Yeah. So the different kind of non-negotiables I teach people. Okay. There's levels of intimacy, which I call training in the art of sexpionage, right? So there's kind of these 8 kind of levels that you learn, right? Yeah. But kind of at the root of all of it are habits, right? It's daily connections. So I teach daily connections. There are 1,440 minutes in every single day. And so I'm asking you to spend 10 to 20 of those minutes every day, non-negotiable. If you can't find 20 minutes out of 1,440, it's time to renegotiate the schedule, right? So this is a time where you're going to be with your partner. There's no phones, there's no kids, there's no distractions. It's just the two of you, and you're asking each other questions about your inner world. So this is a Gottman principle. You're learning about each other's inner worlds. So this is like, it goes beyond how was your day, but it was like, what are you super excited about? Like, what was really hard for you? How was that big thing you've been working on, right? So you're getting to know each other's inner worlds. You go back and forth. And then at the end, you have some physical manifestation of connection. So that's could be a kiss, that could be a hug, it could be a back rub, whatever's meaningful to you as a representation that you've connected. So that happens every day, non-negotiable. Like there's no reason why that shouldn't happen. Sure. And then okay, so that's daily connections, right? That's number one. Number two, weekly date nights. Super important. This is 3 hours out of 168 hours in a week where we don't talk about kids, we don't talk about finances, we don't talk about business, we don't talk about the things that are bothering us. That's for another time, right? Yeah. We go out and like weekly date nights are for connection and fun and like tapping into that giddy teenage, we just met and we're so in love energy, right? So it doesn't have to be expensive or extravagant. In fact, my husband and I's favorite date night right now during COVID is like picking a fast food restaurant, picking up takeout, eating in the car, watching the sunset, walking around the lake or something like that, right? We talk about our favorite books. We talk about like what is like making us happy during the day, right? Those types of things. That is date night, and you end that with physical intimacy. So at least every day you're connecting on an emotional and physical level quickly, and every week you're again connecting emotionally during that date night and physically at the end.
Oh my God,
that is how you that connection, that's how you tune into each other. That's how you'll know if there's a problem and if something needs to be renegotiated. And if something does need to be renegotiated, it's outside of those 2 periods of time. And then the daily 5 I like to teach as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, I'm a planner, right? So I plan my yearly goals. I've got my quarterly goals, my monthly goals, my weekly goals. And every night before I shut down, like when we get off this call, right, I'm going to look at my tomorrow and I'm going to see what I have going on tomorrow, what I need, and make sure I have my podcasting, editing equipment, whatever my day looks like tomorrow. And I pick my daily 5. My partner always makes it onto my daily 5, whether it's as simple as sending him a text in the middle of the day, reminding him of our hot date tomorrow night, right? Or if it's picking up his favorite drink at the grocery store so that he knows I was thinking about him, leaving a note on his pillow, letting him know I really appreciate him doing the dishes. Whatever it is, small, simple, something in my daily 5. I know the day's been a success if that gets done. So those are the 3 like ways to ensure that you're not getting too far.
I guess writing this stuff down, I know I am. This is good. This is amazing. Thank you so much. Because I like how you've because I'm gonna be, how do I say this? Right now in the world, if you go out there and you look at you try to just type in any sort of dating advice or anything like that online, I'm sorry, you get bombarded by so much bullshit. And I love how you because usually it's about like, how do you know if they're cheating? How it's already a lot of it's already kind of built, like you're already assuming things are already over, right? It's this injustice that makes it so consumable online. And here you are just explaining it to us so simple, straightforward, just do this, do that, you'll be fine. And I'm just like, thank you for being a bright light. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I've learned it. My mess became my message, right? And so I just figured out a way to not get too far off track, because it's pretty simple. It's not easy, but it's pretty simple.
So I can take it from what you guys talk about is like, these are the things like where I was writing them down and I was like, yeah, that happened. And then you could see like there was a disconnect here, disconnect there, or something like that. So you can see that it's almost like this is the recipe that people should be doing. And it also, when you can even break it down into not only it's about like the relationship with the husband and wife, it could be like your team building, like other teams, that type of thing. So if you're a manager, you can go ahead and do the same exact thing where you can actually be a little bit more communicative, because I have seen this a lot, especially being an engineer, that they tend to be very non-emotions, just black and white, and they don't really care about like what's really going on. They just want to say, what can you get done? How are you going to get done? And do you have any roadblocks? And what are you working on today? What are you working on tomorrow? It's all like you're a machine. And it says, we're not machines. We are human beings living this experience. And that's what I want to say. Thank you so much for that tidbit of knowledge and information that everybody needs to utilize, whether they're in a relationship or whether they're not in a relationship. This is gold. Thank you.
It works with your kids too. So, I mean, apply it to any relationship that you don't want to get estranged from, right?
No, you're right. Because like when I think about my kids, like from school and everything, I'm completely vulnerable with them because that's what I wanted as a kid. Right? Mm-hmm. So then why aren't I doing it with my relationship? There's no excuse.
Yeah. So if you do it right, the kids are going to leave and the spouse is still going to be there. So you got to make sure that you're doing it with the spouse.
No, I just want the kids. I just want to keep the kids. They're great.
I promise you don't want to end up with the kids and not the spouse.
Agreed.
Monica, we're coming to the end of our show here. Today, you have given us a wealth of value and information. I know we could probably go on for hours and hours about this, but we want people to get in touch with you so they can learn more about your programs, how to get a hold of you so that they can get the coaching necessary to grow their family stronger as well as building their business. How can they go about doing that?
Absolutely. So you can find everything on my websites, www.onthebrightersideofmarriage.com. I have a Facebook group by the same name, On the Brighter Side of Marriage for Entrepreneurs. I hang out on Instagram a lot at Monty Tanner 1, or you can find the podcast, which is so really incredibly awesome. We've done some really fun interviews. So like the thing about, earning $1 million or $1 billion, like these entrepreneurs have done it like successfully with their families in tow. Right. And so that's really fun to hear their stories. I always laugh that I love The Bachelor. Like I love a good reality TV series, but what I love more than a young woman dating 25 hunky men, right, is like a couple who has made it through like the tough times and the good times, and they've done it together. And the way they tell their story is just like so incredibly amazing to hear. So you can find the podcast On the Brighter Side, Marriage for Entrepreneurs, from the website.
That's absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your gifts and your talents with us today. Please reach out to Monica. She's the best in the business. She will definitely help you get to where you are now, to where you need to be. So make sure that you reach out to her. We're going to have information about Monica on her website at theextraordinarybeingmovement.com. So you could check her out there as well. But before I go, I want to get some final thoughts. Fred Martinez, final thoughts from you, sir.
Like I stated earlier, this is gold. This is something that a person should be doing on an every day. You need to be working on yourself, be working on the relationship, working on your business. So those are the three things that you should always be looking at. The three important things: business, yourself, and your relationship. So thank you for clarifying all the information to us.
You bet.
Thank you. And Christopher Shiver, final thoughts.
3 words: vulnerability, creativity. Vulnerability, curiosity leads to creativity. That's it. That's all I'm focused on. That's it.
Absolutely. I got it. Absolutely amazing, Chris. So again, Monica, thank you so much for spending your time with us. We look forward to collaborating with you and talking to you again. So thank you. Again, this is Len DeCarmine with the Extraordinary Being Movement. Check us out on all the podcasting sites. You can download this episode and many others. Check out our YouTube channel and also visit us at theextraordinarybeingmovement.com. We thank you so much and we wish you the best for your success, your business, and of course, your relationships and your family. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.